So this will be my new guide on how to make RU58841, along with some tips and tricks on making the vehicle, derma rolling, and a few things that I'm going to cover. So in this arsenal that you see in front of you right now, these two bottles are for propylene glycol and the final mixed solution of RU. Eyedropper tool, scoop RU itself, and here obviously Everclear for my alcohol. You'll need 190 proof or 95%. A few other things that I actually use on a regular basis is the Vichy Dercos Neogenic shampoo. It's got Stamoxidine. Obviously Minoxidil or off-brand Rogaine. It's cheap if you get it on eBay. It's only about 30 bucks, I think, for maybe 6 months worth. I think that's how much I paid for it last time. I buy so seldomly that and in large packages that I typically forget. I typically dump my Everclear into this bottle because getting it out of that is much more difficult. So it's pretty easy using the eyedropper tool to just pull out however much alcohol I need. And obviously the derma roller. And that's basically all I use. Other things, of course, Cetiprint and everything else, but I'll get to that maybe another time. But the rules apply more or less the same on how to mix vehicles, so I'm just going to go through that, and let's jump right to it. So here we go. Essentially, this is all you really need to use. Obviously, the .001 scale, I didn't mention it before, but you'll want that to accurately measure how much RU you're going to need. I also would like to mention that you'll probably want to use a container, an airtight container, to hold all your stuff. So I keep all my goodies, all the stuff that should be kept frozen or in a cold environment, make it last longer. I bought myself one of these containers. You can see it here. So it's just an airtight container. It just goes into the freezer. I keep all my stuff in there. That'll help a lot. I mean, obviously it's already closed, so it shouldn't matter too much, but I kind of go overboard just to make absolute certainty that it'll last longer. So, moving along, we'll need to make some RU. We'll see how much I end up using for this example, but if you guys know basic math, you'll be able to figure it out in terms of percentages of how much you want to use. So let's get right ahead and get to it. Turning on the scale, you'll notice that it zeroes out. It's good. Press the tare button. If you don't use the tare button, you'll get an off reading. So if I press tare now, it'll show 0, but if I put the tray on, it'll show 2.5. Press tare again, and then it'll zero out. So now you'll get an accurate reading of how much RU is actually going to be used. That said, we'll just scoop out some RU and see how much we get here. So this is here 374. Let's make 10 batches of RU at 40 milligrams per. That's close enough, 407. So we'll use 40 milligrams per 1 milliliter, and that is essentially it. So we'll need 10 milliliters of the vehicle. So as you know, the vehicle is something that RU will be used to penetrate the skin. So now I've got propylene glycol and alcohol here, so we'll just get mixing. We can pre-dump this now, it doesn't really matter. Just drop it in there. And we're good with that. The scale is not needed anymore. So I usually like to make my vehicles either 60-40 or 70-30 ratio for alcohol to propylene glycol concentration. We'll just open up the bottle of alcohol. So we're making 10 batches, so just do the math. 10 times 0.7, so we'll need 7 milliliters of Everclear alcohol. So we'll use the eyedropper to measure 10 times of 0.7, so that's 1 milliliter, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That one was slightly less, but I'll just make up for the next one. 7. Now usually there's a few drops that always get stuck inside the dropper, so I typically add a little more at the end. You don't have to be exact. It's not going to make a major difference. As long as you're fairly close, it's fine. And now for the propylene glycol, I pre-dump this like my Everclear into a smaller bottle so it's easier to manage. So I'll need 3 milliliters of this stuff. So 1, 2, 3, and a little more just to make up for the few drops that were lost. And that is essentially it. There's nothing else that really needs to be done. Just shake it up. You'll notice that, I'm going to put it into focus now. You'll notice that, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but the RU is starting to dissolve. You'll see a little bit like floating flakes. It almost look like a mini snow globe. But give it like a bunch of good shakes. Now you could stir it with the dropper. Again, doesn't really matter how you do it. Give it like 15 to 30 minutes, I suppose, for it to fully dissolve, and you're ready to go. That's basically it. There's nothing else. I know a lot of people get freaked out that, hey, I don't want to be acting like Heisenberg with a chemistry set at home and whatnot, but it's real easy to make this stuff. People are making it far more complicated. As you saw, that it only took me about 5 minutes to make 10 days worth of applications of RUs. So this is good for, you know, one application a day, unless you guys want to use more, and that's it. So good practice before applying your topicals is to do some preparation. First, it's a good idea to exfoliate, so you'll want to get some exfoliating cream. I'm not advertising for Clarins, it's just the only stuff that I had. But you'll want to exfoliate, get rid of dead skin, to allow all your topicals to penetrate much better. After that, I would recommend derma rolling. So this little guy. Now, these things are insanely sharp. So if you have a low pain threshold, you're in for a surprise, because it's pretty painful. I've ended up in tears sometimes. So there's 3 kinds of derma rollers, or derma objects, really. So this is the derma roller. There's also a derma stamp and a derma pen. Now the derma roller, obviously, you'll want to use side to side or up and down, whatever, across your scalp. The derma stamp is a little easier. It goes straight down. It's as if you're pressing down. I don't have one, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And the derma pen is essentially like a derma stamp, but it's much smaller, and you can get ones that automatically go up and down, like the Derminator. Those are really good. They're a bit pricey. They're like $300, I think. I'm not sure, don't quote me on it, but definitely worth the investment if you're going to be serious about using a derma roller. The benefit to the derma roller is that it also gets rid of wrinkles elsewhere, as far as I know. So it has other uses beyond just for the hair. So what the derma roller will do is induce wound healing, and a whole host of things happen once you wound your scalp. Now, this is based on Falca's work, so there's a lot of science behind it. You'll want to do this no more than once a week, I don't think. You'll notice a lot of times that when you do derma roll, it'll depend on the person, that you might get dermatitis. I've had it before where my skin on my scalp starts shedding like crazy, so it looks a little flaky. I also typically wash off any blood right after I derma roll, because if I let it dry the next day, it looks like brown spots, and it kind of looks like having an onset case of AIDS or something. It looks pretty bad, so just be careful of, or mindful of that. Once you do derma roll, you'll notice that it might sting a little bit after you apply your topicals. Your scalp will be red. That's a good thing. That's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to induce erythema, so you'll be fine on that in that regard. The other bonus is that it opens up the scalp a lot more. So I believe minoxidil has a Dalton weight of, I think, molecular mass of, I think, 209 Dalton. RU is about 360 or something like that. You can open up the scalp to allow penetration of much larger objects to pass through. Obviously, we're not really using anything unless someone actually takes a crack at it and starts FGF9, which I'm trying to do. Beyond the derma roller and the exfoliating, you'll want to also wash your scalp, actually. So after you derma roll and get rid of all of the blood, it's a good idea to wash your scalp, maybe use some Nizoral. Although that gets rid of arachidonic acid, so there are some pros and cons of doing that. And then also I use Vichy shampoo with Stamoxidine. I don't use both after derma rolling. I typically just use one or the other. And then I apply my topicals. Typically I don't like doing RU after derma rolling because it absorbs, or basically hyper-absorbs. The side effects are much greater that can happen. So I like to do RU first, derma roll, and then add all my agonists. So minoxidil, Stamoxidine, and whatever else helps if I have my hands on something else. And then that's basically it. You'll want to use a black towel, by the way, to dry off your scalp. If you use a white towel, you'll notice that you'll get some blotchy red spots that leave some stains. Don't do that. That's basically it. Derma roller care, obviously you'll want to spray it down with isopropanol or something to keep it clean. This little guy can and will attract loose hairs, dead skin, so you want to wipe that off. I use an old toothbrush to clean it, and then spray it down with some isopropanol. I've got a little bottle that sprays it, and or you just dip it in another container of isopropanol as well to clean it, and it's more or less fine. Do this before and after you derma roll, just to make sure, so you don't get any infections or anything of that nature. And that's basically it for the derma rolling aspect. And finally, where I apply my RU with the eyedropper and all my other topicals, I usually go left to right or right to left with the RU along the hairline, and then back up and down along the middle of the top of my scalp. I usually try and cover the areas along the hairline before and after it, or in front and behind it. That way you're covering everything, so you'll notice that it drips down a lot. Now, one word of advice, that when you do make your RU mix, you'll want to, you might benefit from using more propylene glycol. Everclear or alcohols like that, they dry pretty quickly, actually. You'll be surprised. Propylene glycol takes much longer to dry, in fact forever, really. So it'll stick to your scalp much better than having it really runny if you put too much Everclear in. Which is why I recommend not using stuff like KB solution or whatever, because it's it doesn't give you the flexibility to make it according to your own. So try it along those lines, mixing up your concentration or your ratio, and you should be good to go.